Hey everybody, welcome into the New England Ski Journal Basecamp podcast, sponsored by Country Ski and Sport. I'm Mike Spechen, your host, with my co-host,
Keith Pearson. What's going on, Mike?
What a conversation we just had.
Nick Preston likes to talk. And he wants to get you into the freestyle. And we're getting ready for World Cup at Waterville Valley on January 24th and 25th. You ready?
Man, after the conversation that everybody's going to is about to hear, I am jonesing. I mean, my energy level went from high to through the roof.
And you get the idea that he could still throw down a pretty decent run, don't you?
With that energy?
Especially with those skis in the back.
Oh my goodness, yes. I mean, when I've been wanting to do a true freestyle podcast for 85, I think it is, episodes now. Okay. This is the first true freestyle episode. And I wanted to get the energy and the culture behind how it started and what it was. What did you think?
It had me wishing that we had flipped them. If we had Nick before we had Hannah, who we had a few weeks ago, just to almost for a better timeline, as opposed to going back, to start closer to the present, and then go backwards. But this is one of the people who helped mold Hannah into what she became. So it's fascinating introduction to the roots of freestyle skiing in New England.
In New England?
And
for the world.
And around the world.
It is incredible. Rather than us talk too much about it, I want to go right into the interview, and because we can't expound the energy that was just given to us. So right after this short break, we're going to be back with Nick Preston, owner of Freestyle America, and somebody that's been influential in the freestyle movement from its inception to today. We'll be right back after this. The Button Ski Hanger is a patented ski storage fixture that safely stores alpine skis regardless of length, width, or shape. This means that your fat powder skis can now be stored next to your narrower carving skis, your race skis, and your kid skis. For more information, visit their website, buttonskirack.com. The Button Ski Hanger is also available for purchase at amazon.com. So make your purchase today. The Button Ski Hanger is simply better for your skis.
If you want to be inspired and informed on everything about the New England ski and outdoor scene, then you need to check out skijournal.com. Skijournal.com delivers daily content on breaking industry news, tips, gear, dining, travel, entertainment, as well as all archived episodes of the Emmy-nominated New England Ski Journal TV show and the Basecamp podcast. And don't forget to subscribe to New England Ski Journal, the longest-running regional ski magazine in the country. New England Ski Journal's award-winning writers and photographers bring all 4 seasons to your door with best-in-class coverage on skiing and the outdoors. Log on to skijournal.com and click on the subscribe button to get New England Ski Journal mailed to you today. New England Ski Journal is a Siemens Media publication. Siemens Media. Inspiring. Informative. Insightful.
Welcome back, everybody, into the Basecamp podcast. And now joining us, Nick Preston from Campton, New Hampshire. How you doing, Nick?
I'm doing great. So anyway, just waiting for the snowflakes to fly and get out there and start making some turns.
How many days do you have under your belt yet?
I only have 4 days of skiing right now, but I was up at Waterville Valley, and thanks to our president, Tim Smith. I mean, he blew those beautiful venues up there. There was the Canadian national team. I mean, even the U.S. women's team was up there, including Michaela. And we were up there with our Freestyle America camp. We had about 30 of us up there on a mogul venue, and the skiing was unbelievable. And that was the weekend before Thanksgiving. So Tim really got it going well, and that's where my days have been so far. But looking forward to many more.
Well, before we get into talking about freestyle and its history, have you, you've been in this business for a long time. Have you ever seen anything like that in the East where we've gotten an upper mountain just for training?
We've always, in the good old days, we would have the ski areas would be opening on the first week of November. So we'd be kind of prowling around the ski areas and trying to find where the training was. It might have been Killington, and a lot at Waterville. They always had that upper venue that they liked to open early. Tom Corcoran always liked to open it early and kind of work his way down the mountain. So we've been up there, but we've never had this intentional training venue, pull everybody in, have a race venue. The U.S. snowboard team was up there, really a great bunch of guys. I'm a big snowboard fan now because I was hanging out with those guys and girls, and they're just wonderful. And so anyway, I've never really seen anything quite like that at that time of year, with all of the different training venues just ready to go, including a mogul course, a 60-foot big air. It was sensational up there.
Yeah, I was blown away when I was riding the T-bar looking at it and looking at the lanes of gate setup, the border skier cross course. I mean, it was, 2 thumbs up to Tim and the whole crew up there because it was remarkable.
Yeah, it wasn't just blowing the snow. It was getting those venues up. And of course, all of us ski on prepared venues these days. And the fact that Tim and the crew put all that into it was amazing. And, shout out to the cat drivers and the snowmakers. And it just seemed everybody was really dedicated to pulling this thing off. And I think that Waterville and Tim hit it out of the park up there.
They sure did. Well, we're going to be talking about freestyle and the history of it. You were instrumental and still are in this movement. And of course, we're coming to Waterville for the World Cup on the 24th and 25th of January, which is accumulation of all the hard work that you and the predecessors have put forth. Why don't you give us an overview of how the freestyle movement started and the culture, the actual culture that came out of it?
Well, it was truly a product of the 60s, early 70s culture. It was really, I don't know, I suppose you could sort of trace it all to Bob Dylan, the Rolling Stones, and the Beatles. That we were just of a different cut of generation, and of course, whether it was protesting wars or whatever. And so our generation really had this kind of rebellious yen, the freedom and summer of love, all this kind of stuff. I think all feeds into the fact that all of a sudden you had this generation, including myself, out there skiing and really enjoying the freedom and kind of, I was a racer too. I was captain of my Alpine race team when I was at Westminster School down in Connecticut. And so, I came from racing, got into PSIA and got my certification, was all just really into skiing. But now we're talking 1972, and all of a sudden we started hearing about Ridgebell hot dog contests. And then of course, being right over at Pleasant Mountain, this word came to us that there was this incredible event that happened at Waterville Valley, and names like Eddie Ferguson and Wayne Wong were all being thrown around, Susie Chaffee. And we were like, oh, that sounds cool, And at the time, Susie and I were really coaching these 50, 60 kids that were in something called the Junior Masters program. And this was already the alternative to racing. Instead of the kids going to racing, it was kind of a learn to ski and a little bit of this final form stuff. There was a small jump. Part of the final forms was who had the nicest spread eagle. And we're talking a bunch of kids, 13, 14 and under. And so anyway, the ski school said, "Hey, Nick and Susie, why don't you, do something with these kids? They're having a ball." And I would guess it was probably only one season worth of this Masters format, which did include a free ski run, a little jump, and then you had to cut your parallel turns real nice and get evaluated by judges. So at least on the amateur level here in the East, that was the foundation, and it was well organized. And Sugarloaf had a team, and Waterville and Stratton and still all the ones that are still players. They all had these junior teams. Well, it didn't take long for this to just morph right into the world of freestyle. It was really, I would have to say, kind of athlete driven. I learned freestyle skiing from the kids I was coaching. And who was I coaching? I was coaching the 3 Stump kids. I was coaching, future national champions and U.S. team members and Canadian team members, Lily Morrison and Frank Howell and all of these early players. And they were the ones that had been to Eddie Ferguson's camp in the summer. And they were showing us that we had to build the jumps with a little bit of knoll in it. You couldn't just put something in the middle and just, pancake yourself onto the hill. You had to have a little knoll in it and stuff like this. The kids were really coaching coaches to coach them. It was really a marvelous phenomenon. In the meantime, we're teaching them to ski, how to carve a ski and good old PSIA stuff. So after I don't know, halfway through that next season, 73 probably, the kids pointed to Susie and me and said, "Hey, you guys should go off and compete." And so I was like, well, that sounds like fun. I've got 360, I got a bump skier, I'm doing the good old airplane, spreads from one bump to the other and doing all this cool stuff that was coming along. And so off I went down to Berkshire East, as a matter of fact, and went to an event, really well attended, got into the moguls. It was my turn. I got up there. Mike Shea was there, and Wayne wasn't there, but a whole host of those new pros were down there. And so there was plenty of competition. I think Clendenin was there. And so we're skiing on this bump course, and I'm ripping this course, and all of a sudden I caught a tip. I spun around like 3 times, and I went backwards over a few bumps, but I didn't fall. And I heard the crowd going, "Wow," like this, quite a crowd all along the course. So anyway, I ended up in like 3rd place. And I was just like, I did, wait, I screwed up my run. We loved it. So $350. Well, as a ski instructor, I was making $80 a week. All of a sudden I had a month's pay, from one suspect mogul run. And we were like, okay, maybe there's a little more to our ski careers that we could be kind of diving into. And really that came the beginning of Susie's and my competitive career. We were still coaching at Pleasant Mountain. Then next couple of years, we went up to Squaw Mountain. I think they call it Moose Mountain right now. And I think only half of it is actually really functional up there. But boy, that's something up there around Moosehead Lake. And we were coaching a team up there, another 50 kids. And so now 1975, there's going to be a national championship at Killington. And we're like, okay, we're in. So we took our team down there, and by golly, our girl won, Karen Coburn, and went right on to the World Cup, the World Trophy Tour, it was called at the time. And actually, she won a couple of those too. She was just a really talented person. On the other side, on the men's side, Bruce Bolesky won. And Bruce, that's when I met Bruce, and to this day, still one of my best friends. And I would say Bruce and I, when it comes to, who's got the longest careers in freestyle, I mean, certainly Bruce and I would be pretty close to the top of the list. So that's kind of where all that was in the 70s, and lots of money. Susie, in fact, would take a 3rd or a 4th in ballet skiing in particular. And I remember we were out at Heavenly Valley and on the pro tour. Susie pulls off a 4th. She had won $2,500, in 1975, and
That's like
By the way, they
100,000
paid us in
today.
silver dollars because they were kind of hoping they were all going to go to the casinos, but ours didn't, But anyway, so this whole thing just seemed like such an opportunity. And in the meantime, back home, tons of kids being all interested in it. So it really had a very strong start, let's say. And so there's the 70s. And I mean, I'll tell you, you guys, do your questions because I could just go right through to the present if you don't cool me off here.
No, it's one of those things. But when did you realize, like, how did you get into it yourself? Was it just simply from watching the kid you were training do it?
It was largely that we were hired as instructors or as coaches, to train these young kids. And but like I say, it was the kids that had just completely dove into this hook, line, and sinker. I mean, this masters format. I think once Waterville Valley happened, and we all knew about Wayne and Eddie and Susie and all these stars that were all in the magazines and everything. I think by the time we got to 1975, maybe the whole thing had shifted into freestyle. And Tom Corcoran, when he did the Waterville Valley event, he's the one that divided it up into, instead of a hot dog skiing, he divided it up into mogul skiing, what we call ballet or trick skiing, and then aerials. The beauty of it was all in one run. So down True Grit, we all came, and I skied at Waterville Valley. I think I competed here in 75 or 6. And I won some money here too, and met Tom Corcoran, and that's where I met Wayne and got into that whole pro culture. And what a great bunch of friends, many of them to this day.
That's, you know what? You name those people. Of course, we've had Wayne on this podcast last year. Tom, Wayne, they were so influential in the industry as a whole, but especially here in New England. They were incredible. I have been talking about ballet skiing for the last 2 years. I'm a creature of the 70s. So I was on a pair of Olin ballets with Spademans, with Scott boots. It was prerequisite to do ballet. Why don't you give us some background on ballet and how that became such an important part of the freestyle movement?
Well, I think out of the 3 events, aerials at that time had a lot of more upright or a single backflip, single front flip sort of thing, and mogul skiing was pretty much hot dogging down a mogul elite course, and that was fun and sort of had a broad appeal to everybody. But it was really ballet skiing that kind of were the tricks, where you were really showing off, spinning around and jumping in the air and coming around a couple times. We were all working on like double spins, 720s. Then we started flipping over our poles as the poles got much longer, thanks to Mike Russell, who was, of course, a show skier. And then you had Alan Schoenberger, who was, the puppet with the mime outfit on, and Genya Fuller and Susie Chaffee. It really was the showiest part of the sport. And I think in the early days, ballet skiing really defined freestyle skiing as something really interesting, unique, and something that could be done at any ski area. Finding good jumps, that wasn't so easy. Ski Patrol didn't really like you, flying all over the mountain. And moguls, most mountains had some form of moguls, but maybe not necessarily something that would really provide quite what mogul skiers were looking for. And of course, the West had plenty of bumps out there. I mean, they too many,
Sure.
in some ways. They kept on grooming them out. So a lot of the West really was breeding these mogul skiers. But in the East and in Central and even in Far West, it seemed as though the ballet skiers were just everywhere. I mean, I had by 1982 or 3, I had 60, 70 kids in my program, and all of them well, maybe not all. There were maybe only 10 that weren't combined skiers. And even on the pro level, combined was paying. You know, it was so if a guy like me did all three events, and even if I was only, you know, maybe I'd pull a fifth or a top 10 in something like aerials because I was a pretty acrobatic guy, or in ballet, you know, and then the mogul's really competitive. Maybe I'd just get a top 15 if I had a, you know, a pretty decent run. But everything was, you know, it was $200 right down to 20th place and 3,000 for first place. So, you know, if you went, and then they were paying combined. So I would be a 4 paycheck skier, you know, without winning anything, you know, just winning a lot of
Right.
money, you know, a fifth here, a ninth there, a 15th there. Oh, gee, you're fifth combined. Oh, cool. Well, here's another $1,000 for you. You know? So combined skiing was really kind of where it's at. And I think, and that's one of the reasons why Waterville, once Susie and I came to Waterville in 1980 and started coaching that program, it was a combined program. And I think that was one of the reasons why the Waterville program was really a mecca of sorts, because we could train all the events. And Tom Corcoran would get the mountain to build us the jumps, and he would let us rope off a place just for ballet, so people weren't, you know, as we're going back and forth and flipping around, people weren't killing us. And then also he would try to make sure that there were moguls on True Grit or wherever they were making snow. So we were a combined program, and what a ball. I love combined. And of course, everything's kind of gone into its own little niche now, but hey, it's still all about freedom and the sport. Even when ballet skiing, you could say, died. And I'll raise my hand and say I was the guy with the biggest ballet program. I probably put 30 kids on the U.S. ballet team, or athletes, and the Olympic movement is where the events got divided out. Combined skiing kind of died when we tried to get it into the Olympics. And they loved mogul skiing. Oh, that's great. You know, we'll throw that one in. And this was in '88, by the way, in Calgary, when they demonstrated. They don't do this anymore, but we demonstrated these events. They had medals and all that stuff, but they weren't really official. And at that time, they liked aerials. Fists liked aerials. Fists liked moguls. They didn't like ballet. The main reason being is that figure skating was going through all of this strife, arguing about gold medals and lawsuits and everything like that. And I think Fist just said, hey, we really don't want another figure skating at this point, you know, too political, too nasty, you know, in a way. And of course, figure skating, as marvelous as it is, and has come through a lot of that. But that really was kind of the death of ballet. And then in USSA, we kept ballet going right up to 2001, and Waterville was running the nationals, and it was not going to be a fist sport. We could do a national champion. We had team members. We were still kind of sponsoring a team, but it was about to die. And in fact, I was the one running our program, was going to build, you know, help engineer these courses and really be the technical guy here at Waterville to pull off this 2001 nationals. And they said, are we going to really run ballet? And I was just like, okay, let's just let it go. You know, if it's not going
Right.
to. And I remember Park Smalley calling me up and he goes, hey, Nick, you're the last guy I thought would put a nail in this coffin, you know. And I said, you know, let's just go with it. Let's just run with it here, you know. So anyway, it lasted till 2000 to the junior nationals and the nationals, and then in 2001, Waterville Valley, we did not run ballet, and I think that was the last sanctioned ballet event maybe that has been runs ever, you know. That was it. So that was the end of ballet, but it was a wonderful event. First of all, you could do it anywhere. People that thought it wasn't really skiing, I hate to tell you, it had more skiing in it than almost anything. You had to be able to release edges, you had to be able to set edges, you had to be able to ski backwards, you know, you're flipping over. your poles, the amount of balance and the amount of agility and athleticism, I think, exceeded really the other events. You know, the others were a little more specific to their skill set, where ballet had all those skills in it. So we loved it. And when you trained a ballet skier, that skier could do anything. They could do aerials, they could do moguls, and if they were good in ballet, then in combined skiing, they'd have a nice hefty result, you know, to get them there combined. And skiers like Nikki Stone that won a gold medal in aerials, or Hannah Carney that won a gold medal in moguls, they were all ballet skiers at the beginning. And I had to call Hannah kind of personally, because she was going to get a spot in ballet and moguls in the 2000 at the age of 14. I don't know how old she was, really young, 14, I think. And I called her. I said, Hannah, we're not going to run ballet. Cried like a baby. You know? I think it really was her favorite event. But she turned out all right in the end.
I really miss it, because as you stated, you can do it anywhere on virtually, you know, those basic slopes all of a sudden become fun. You know, and the other thing, as you stated, there are very few areas that have bump skiing top to bottom. There's very few Mary Janes out there.
That's right.
At Winter Park that you can ski bumps from the top of the lift all the way to the base, and it could be 15 or 1,800 vertical feet. So that was the beauty of ballet.
And a lot of ballet skiers would come from Wachusett, they'd come from the Midwest. Yeah, I had half my academy came from Mount Wachusett, because they were all a bunch of ballet skiers down there. And I think 4 or 5 of them ended up on the U.S. team. They're a really talented bunch of boys and girls. And so they would help feed our academy, and really the ability for our freestyle academy to really get going. I think we were really, Waterville might have been one of the first, if not the first, ski academy that had a freestyle program in it. And I was up at CVA in the late 70s. Susie and I were Sugarloaf skiers, and we were running a tutorial program, which was the beginning of CVA. And that was great. And it went on, you know, CVA, of course, just a wonderful ski academy, and Sugarloaf, a fabulous ski area. And they still run a terrific programs up there to this day. So, but Waterville was a true 5-month ski academy. So we captured all kinds of skiers that were interested in combined, and the aerial side of things too. We were one of the few programs, thanks to Tom Corcoran, that would build an aerial site, you know, something that we could really train on. All the other ski areas, I think, were just a little afraid of it.
Mm-hmm. Was Tom really the reason why Waterville became the freestyle spot that it became? Or was it just, or were the guys there first, you know, the people to take advantage of that?
I think you would have to assign Tom Corcoran as one of the key players. I think Doug Pfeiffer from Skiing Magazine really saw this hot dogging going on, and he knew that was going to be good for, you know, magazine stuff, which it was. I mean, I still have all those magazines, you know, in my shelves somewhere. And you know, every issue was just filled with these new stars of skiing, and so Pfeiffer and Corcoran, they're the ones that kind of put their, you know, got together and said, hey, let's just see who's got, you know, the freestyle or whatever, you know, let's see who the best free skiers are on the mountain, whether they're racers, whether they're anybody, you know. And of course, a lot of racers would end up crossing over into freestyle quite successfully. And one thing that I will say about freestyle, if you cross over from racing, you don't go back.
Right.
That's what we found. I knew that once they came to camp, or once they did something like this, they were in. You know, it was just it was so much more fun, really. And I love racing to this day, you know, and huge fan. And beautiful sport. And oh my gosh, look at the kind of skiing that we see when you watch, you know, racing. You know, it's just wonderful. But racing, I've got a son that's into racing. I mean, I'll tell you, you're highly invested these days. Hey, freestyle, you know, pair of skis, some baggy pants, goggles, you know, poles optional if you're a free rider. you know, often running, you know, so very, very accessible. And really thanks to the parks, which are almost at every ski area in the country right now. So
Sure.
we're really rocking the parks for sure. And mogul skiing's doing well. You know, it's been on that slow, steady growth. I think in the East, I think right here in New Hampshire, we probably have a couple of hundred mogul skiers, U14. You know, so it's really doing great. And now, of course, we'll see dual moguls in the Olympics coming up, which is something we've been fighting for ever since we had dual moguls back in the 80s. But it's much more legit now because really we're building the courses. You know, once you build the venues, you can actually do a lot with your sport. There's a sentiment that criticizes freestyle for not being natural moguls. And it's like, well, you know, if it's natural moguls, there's a lot of variables that don't necessarily identify the skier of the day. You know, and on a built course, and by the way, these courses look like you're running down the stairs, but I'm a course builder. No, we're on offense too. You know, I put little flushes in mine when I build the courses, and you know, little things that might throw them off a little bit. I said, no, you're not going to stair run my course. You know, you're gonna have to ski it, and that's where duels really made its mark too, because now when you have a build course, you know, center line, right line, left line, they're pretty close to each other. So now you can go head to head and not just think, it was the red course was the better course, you know, so you lucked out by drawing the course. No, it's a wonderful thing to see our sport actually on these designed venues, because now it's about athleticism, it's about skill, it's about fitness, and it's not there's not luck. There's very little. Okay, maybe it snowed or rained or before your run or something, a little bit of bad luck. We're an outdoor sport, but Kingsbury or LaFont, any of those will just ski right through that stuff. You know that, and no problem.
Well, you mentioned ski racing and freestyle. How did FIS and the USSA, how hard was it for them to accept freestyle into their genres?
I really think it's only in the past couple of Olympics where I think it's all been acknowledged as totally legit and an Olympic level sport. And at first, however, completely the opposite. You know, the politics were mean and ugly, and it was really almost heartbreaking at times. You know, and you had ski area operators that didn't really want to see freestyle. You know, back in the 70s, the first thing that just about killed the whole sport was in the early aerial days. We had a couple of tragic accidents. You know, and so the skiers were just like, well, we're done with this sport. You know, yeah, we can't take any of these $1 million, multi-million-dollar lawsuits. You know, and so the politics, just the insurance, we couldn't get insurance. You know, I ran Freestyle America for 14 years, bare, no insurance at all. I couldn't get it. You know, so I was just going to run it anyway. You know. The good old freestyle rebel in me was just like, okay, yeah, insurance isn't behind us. I don't care. We're doing our sport, you know. So the politics was tough, and FIS was tough. And FIS, I don't think anyone's going to really, you know, criticize me for saying what I'm going to say about FIS. It's a bunch of mucky mucks up there, you know. I mean, they're you know, just imagine, you know, what some Austrian mucky muck that's all about racing. You know, to this day, we don't really see much coming from Austria in the world of freestyle. It's such a, and don't get me wrong. I mean, the fact that they kind of own skiing as their top national sport, that's a beautiful thing, you know, in a beautiful country. And it was Austrians that taught me to ski, and it was Austrians that taught me my first tricks. I was up at Jay Peak. I'm 12 years old. They're rolling around their tips and they're you know, doing Royal Christies and all kind, crossing their skis over. They were really early freestylers. There was even one of the Austrians at Jay Peak threw a backflip. I think it was
That's awesome.
Yeah, off of jumps. And I'm watching this 12-year-old kid, and I'm like, oh, this is great. And these guys were my heroes, So my best friend and I that were up at Jay Peak together, we'd just go right out there after our lessons and we'd start doing this stuff, So we were actually throwing freestyle tricks, back in the 60s. I didn't really answer your question.
No, that's okay. You know what? I knew the answer. I knew the friction between the two, and there was huge friction, just the same friction that happened between skiers and snowboarders. Very similar type friction.
Yes. And I'll let me just shout out to the Waterville Academy on this one, because the head race coach was George Capal, who was really a legendary race coach and went on to coach the U.S. team. He's Swiss. And I showed up, and George, the race coach, and he had kids in the academy, Felix McGrath and Ava Fosse, and some real greats in there. And he embraced the whole thing. He would come over to our jump, and George himself would throw some big, huge heli on his 217s or whatever the heck he was wearing at the time. He'd bring his racers over to see if they could go off our jumps, to see if they could pop off it, and then see if they could suck it up, which was a little more their skill set. So George Capal, who was the head race coach, just completely loved racing. And then I was recruiting incredible athletes like Nikki Stone, like Chuck Martin, who became Olympians and national champions. And we could hang with the racers when it came to fitness. We were totally into the 70s fitness thing myself. And George was into it. And so he completely embraced us. And then the same happened when Billy Enos came here to do snowboarding. Billy was in my program as a freestyle skier. He was a fabulous ballet skier. He finally got into snowboarding. Now he's the director. So, hey, George and Billy and myself, snowboarding, freestyle racing, we were one happy family. And we were packing the academy with kids, which is what a ski academy needs to do. You needed to get your 50 kids in there, or else it was pretty hard to run a school. And so I'd have 18 and Billy would have 18 and racing would have 25 or something like this. And so now we had a school, and it was been embraced ever since. And the board of directors would embrace it. We had Doc Sossman, some Hall of Famers here. We had Anna McIntyre that loved snowboarding, loved freestyle, and Tom Corcoran, who just loved it all. And he'd sit down at the end of the board meetings, and he would put the wind behind everybody's back. He was just amazing. So Waterville Valley really was a resort, and I think it's leadership. In our sport, it's always leadership. Who's running the ski area? Who's
Sure.
the head coach of freestyle? Who's the head coach of racing? That's what defines how good your program is. And Tom Wood and Waterville Valley, and I think one reason why I was hired, I was already known as a Sugarloaf coach that had taken a bunch of kids and we'd won some national champions and everything. And they said, hey, Nick, would you like to come down to Waterville? And I'm just like, well, they said, yeah, our program's kind of soft right now and would like to fire it up. And I'm just like, well, no, that's the birth of, even to myself, no, that's where this whole thing kind of started. No, that sounds good to me. And I knew Tom Corcoran. And so he was just terrific. But in the Olympic movement, there was one other character that was really key to this whole thing. And his name is Irving Kagan. And Irving Kagan was a very successful businessman from Bangor. And he was really chairman of the board up at Sugarloaf of the freestyle program. And this man could move the room. And he would go up against these naysayers at the national meetings, and he would work that room. And I'll tell you, they would have to back down. He was just brilliant. And I would say Irving, and then Jack Sanders, who was Wayne Wong's first agent, by the way back in the early day. He was a lawyer. So those guys really got in there. And between a lawyer and a really successful businessman, you really had those guys pushing the Olympic movement. And they were as instrumental as anybody. And of course, the rest of them all up there too, that were running our sport at the time.
Sure.
Just can you walk us through who some of these athletes were that you had a chance to mold at, and obviously at more than just Waterville, because like you said, you were at Waterville Valley, you were at Pleasant, you were at Big Squaw, and all the stops in between. Just who are the people that you've been able to help be that second generation of freestylers?
Yes, and also because I was running a summer camp, so that even if they weren't here at Waterville or Sugarloaf or Pleasant, I would have athletes that were coming in from Killington and Stratton and Sugarbush and all. So I had a chance to really help a lot, and I don't know, thousands of athletes. But I would say if I had to go down the list, obviously the gold medal winners were amazing athletes, or the Olympians themselves. So and you just had a podcast with Hannah, so
Yep.
she's kind of well known. It's going to be in the Hall of Fame, etc. And later in March. And so Hannah was somebody that showed up when she was, I don't know, 10, and she has a marvelous mother that was really behind her, very athletic and a gymnast, and ran a little gymnastics gym and stuff like this, and called me up one day and just said, "Hey, I've got this girl that seems to be interested, and she skis at Dartmouth Skiway and probably could use a program." So this little pigtail girl comes over, and I ski with her, and she's quiet and she doesn't say a word. Mom's doing all the talking, and we're having a ball riding up the chairlift, and I'm watching this little girl ski. I'm just like, ooh, wow, you know them when you see them, quite frankly, and that's not genius by any means. I mean, you guys know it when you see it too, some little squirt skiing down and go, whoa, look at that little kid. Well, that was Hannah. And so I skied with her in the afternoon. Mom comes up to me, and I don't even really recall saying that, but Jill Carney reminds me that she said, "Well, what do you think? Does my girl have any potential?" I'm like, "Jill, girls like this end up on the US ski team, pure and simple." And so they joined that very weekend, and Hannah stuck with us loyally almost to this day. Of course, now she has a new life out there in Park City, with their little babies and all that. But she was always, even on the U.S. team, which she made at the age of 15, by the way, she would always come back and train with us in the summer. So Hannah was just a pleasure. Intense. By the way, all of these highly successful were pretty intense. So there was Nikki Stone, and she showed up at the age of 15. She was already a level 10 gymnast, but she was 5'8" or whatever she was. She was too tall to be a gymnast. So mom and dad decided to throw her into a freestyle program, and she came to summer camp. So she came to Freestyle America. And all of a sudden there's this girl throwing double fulls and things that my freestylers could only dream of. And so she was another one that was like, oh my gosh, look at the amount of talent. And of course, she went on to Nagano and won her gold medal in aerials. There was a fella named Chuck Martin, and Chuck is somebody that I think you folks would really enjoy having on your podcast someday too. He was one of the most successful athletes on the divisional level I ever had. I think we went through the whole Eastern schedule. I think he went undefeated. He was just that nobody could beat him, and he was really sort of quiet. But first one out there to training, and then keeping me out there after dark. Nick, one more jump, one more. Oh, Chuck, okay, yeah, okay, one more jump, and then we're going in. This is to take a jump. Nick, how about one more jump? The lift's still open. So the dedication and he was a Killington boy that came to our academy and grew up in Killington. His mom and dad were selling real estate over there, whatever they were doing. Just a beautiful, beautiful athlete. Went on to be in the Pro Mogul Tour and was a champion on that level, was an Olympian. And so he really ran the route. His boy, now little Chuck, is was here at the Mountain Fair Inn when we had nationals last year, and so he's got a son that's pretty much in the tube. And so Chuck was just a pleasure and fit. George Capal, who was fit as anything, he loved Chuck. Chuck was probably more fit than his racers were. And so Chuck was one of those people that carried that standard. If anybody in your academy was that fit, everybody had to be fit. Yeah, you couldn't be a lackey around someone like Chuck. So when you have the alphas on your team, when you have people like Hannah and Chuck and Nikki, Stacy Bloomer would be another one, an Olympian. There's been 10 Olympians that have drifted through this program, and with more coming, by the way. We're looking forward to Hunter Henderson and his free ride career, and Gracie, his sister, perhaps to get their Olympic spots as we're coming up. So these kinds of athletes, and by the way, these athletes are parent funded. It's not like you get into the national system and all of a sudden you're getting carried along by your country. We're the only country that doesn't do that all the way to the highest levels. When my two boys made the U.S. ski team, I had Wes and Tim on there at the same time. One's a mogul skier, one was an aerialist. And USSA says, oh yeah, by the way, they're going to go to a couple World Cups before Christmas. Send us a check for 16 grand. I go, is that the whole year? No, that's just till Christmas. I'm just like, oh, Jesus, this U.S. ski team stuff's a hassle. However, we have the most successful system in the world, privately funded. It's either parents or they go out and raise some money, or USSA goes and raises some money, because USSA doesn't get any national money either. So it's very interesting that the most successful system in the world is actually ski clubs, I suppose is what you'd say. And parents just carrying their kids right along. It always kind of blows me away, but it's true to this day.
That's crazy. I mean, I'm not surprised, but crazy. So I heard a story. You've traveled the world. You've traveled skiing. I heard something about Paul McCartney.
Susie and I, right at the end of our competitive careers, in 1979, I think it was, and Olin Skis, which was our sponsor, calls us up and goes, hey, would like to take you and Genya Fuller and Susie, and let's go to Japan, and they're going to run a Japan Cup, and Japan wants to get into this game. And so Olin was part of actually their parent company was a Japanese company at that point, Daiwa Seiko. And so us Olin skiers went, with Scott Booth's Spademan bindings, by the way, and just like yours. So they put us on an airplane, and we're flying over there, and it's 14-hour flight from New York. We were up at Sugarloaf at the time, so we had to drive to New York and then jump on a plane. And 14 hours later, we're in Narita Airport in Tokyo, and Susie and I are on this plane like dead. And then so the pilot comes out and says, we're going to do runway deboarding. So stay in your seats. And I'm just like, runway deboarding. Oh, there's some dignitary on board. No, this is going to be a hassle. So Susie, let's just hang. Let's let everybody leave. So the plane empties. And we're like, okay, let's go. We're walking out right by the door. There's Paul McCartney in wings. I look down at Paul and I'm just like, Susie, it's a beetle. and Paul looks up at me and goes, yeah. I'll just never forget how friendly that was. I think that's just who the guy is. Linda, no, she wasn't into these, two satellites that were going to now kind of walk in with the band, as it were. But I'm a musician, and I'm just like, wow, I'm walking in with wings. It's the coolest thing has ever happened, So we walk in, screaming fans behind the gate, and I don't know if they knew me from the band, so I'm playing it up like this too, And so we walk in, and all of a sudden Paul gets separated from the band. He's carrying his little girl, and he's carrying a bag, And he goes into a different room, and the rest of us go the other way through immigration. I go, oh yeah, he's doing interviews and blah, blah, blah. Well, we meet our host that took us to the Shinjuku Hotel. You know, we're on the 42nd floor above Tokyo in one of those restaurants that goes around. We turn on the TV, Paul's in jail. In jail, you know, a Beatle is in jail, you know. And unfortunately, Paul thought that maybe he could get through with their little stash. And but back in 1979, that wasn't going to work in Japan. And we were in Japan for 9 days, having an unbelievable time, snowing every day and competing, and they were throwing yen at us. You know, even I think they were just being polite. I think I won the event because they were just being polite. You know, they kept on giving me these huge scores and throwing yen my way of all kinds. And the whole time we were there, Paul was still behind bars. It was really strange. We had to get all the way home before he got out. But anyway, that was a great privilege. But maybe even more interesting was when I was chosen to take our NORAM team at the time, just right below our US team, to the Soviet Union. You know, Gorbachev wanted all this perestroika stuff to go on. And so we were going to have an athlete exchange. Well, the Russians came over to the Lake Placid World Cup first, and I was sort of in charge of our team and their team and kind of helping to train these. And I had a little coaching staff working with us. And these Russians were hugely talented. They came from trampoline. They came from figure skating. They were amazing athletes just right off the bat. Their coaches, not so much. They were kind of paunchy and they were hitting the vodka at night and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, we had them in Lake Placid, and then they're like, okay, now it's April. We're going to the Caucasus. We're going to run the Russia Cup. So off we go to Moscow in 1987. Moscow is not a pretty city. It was dark, dirty, and everybody was watching everybody. It was fascinating, you know, really. I mean, and our escorts didn't even last very long. I think they were trying to pull strings on us or something, and they kept getting fired, and new people kept coming in, and people were always whispering about other people, and it was kind of weird. And the food was terrible, etc. But then after a week of that, and the Bolshoi Ballet and the Russian circus and all the Kremlin jewels and all this amazing stuff that we were able to see, which was all stunning stuff. But down to the Caucasus we go. I mean, these are 18,000-foot mountains down there. I mean, these are the highest mountains in Europe, and a beautiful sort of brand new resort, kind of all piney and woody with a spa. And we had way nicer rooms than up in Mount. The food was way better because now you're down in Georgia where you actually do get oranges and things like this. And so anyway, just a fabulous trip down there, but a real pleasure to sort of open up Russia, which of course that closed again. But anyway,
yeah, it is, unfortunately. But that's Nick. That is. I don't even know what to. I don't even know what to say. The enthusiasm, the love of the sport, the love of freestyle. I mean, going into the Waterville World Cup, which is just a couple weeks away from this podcast, you just gave us, anybody that listens to this podcast and doesn't want to be up there to see the excitement that you just exude is nuts. I mean, unbelievable.
Well, thank you, Mike. And I think that it won't disappoint. And last year was an incredible event. And our men's team is young and talented. The women's team is seasoned, and in the past few World Cups, we've put 7 of them in the top 10. And so we have an incredible team. It will be incredible skiing on an amazing slope. Lower Bobby's Run, one of the premier cuts of hill in the world. And that's not me saying it. That's everybody that came to the World Cup last year, including the coaches from other countries. They go, this is the kind of hill we like. So come on up on 24th and 25th of March, and you're going to see some
January.
I'm sorry, January. That's right.
See, you pull my mistakes on occasions.
Yeah, kind of confusing with Hannah's induction into the Hall of Fame.
Exactly.
But anyway, it's a spectacular event, and in mogul skiing, you see the whole thing. You can even go down the side of the course, so you're close to the action, and it's a thrill. It's a real wow event. So yes, I would encourage anybody that likes skiing to come on up and see some of the world's finest skiers ever.
Well, that is fantastic.
Who are some names that we should look for that have come through Freestyle America?
Well, in this one, my generation of skiers, I've been retired now since 2017, 2018 or whatever. And really the generation of mogul skiers right now is largely based at a few outstanding programs. Certainly the Park City program, the Wasatch program, Steamboat Springs, Telluride out west, and Killington, Sugarloaf. I think that the Freestyle America athletes have really, in the last one, were a little more frequent. In this one, I'm really looking for Casey Hogg, who was second in duels last year, and just an amazing skier. And she's a Killington skier. She's a New Hampshire girl, and she and her sister came to Freestyle America just a couple times. I can't really put a pin in her necessarily, but she is just a great skier. She's kind of my pick, even though she's up against it for sure. But she's, as I say, she had a great event last year. So I'm looking forward to Casey. And so thank you for asking the question, though.
Well, that is awesome. Go, Casey. And Nick, we'll plan on seeing you up there. Looking forward to it. Keith and I want to thank you for coming on. Like I said, the enthusiasm, the energy, it's exactly what skiing is all about.
Well, thank you for that. Nothing better than a life in freestyle skiing is what I would say.
Fantastic. Folks, we'll be right back after this. Thank you, Nick Preston, for joining us today.
A pleasure.
Welcome back, everybody, into the Basecamp. I hope the listener got the same energy level that you and I got, Keith.
I've never considered myself freestyle. Nobody's ever gonna say, look at his moves off the jumps. But I'm ready. I'm ready to hit it.
I can see you doing pole flips. Okay,
I'm definitely not ballet trained.
I can see it happening, but you haven't done that many podcasts with me. I don't know, maybe 8.
Yeah, a handful.
Yeah.
Ballpark.
Yeah, whatever. The energy that was just given to you from somebody that has invested his whole career into a sport. Have you ever felt anything like that?
No, you figure like Nick's been around doing freestyle for 50 plus years. Those same 50 plus years that he was into it. Like as long as it's been freestyle, Nick Preston's been a part of it. And that's pretty cool to be able to see. And essentially, he's within the 6 circles of freestyle skiing. Like he is the core, like part of that nucleus. It's pretty cool to be able to see. And the fact that he's still just as upbeat about it now as he was when he was cashing checks.
Yeah, I want to put it in perspective. You're a journalist. Okay, sports journalism. Mm-hmm. Okay. You do the same thing over and over every day. Are there times when you say, I'm so done with this? In the sense of, I don't want to write the same story again. I don't want to do the same thing. Yeah. Nick's been doing this for 50 years, the same thing. I don't know too many people that can say they've created a career in a sport that they love that want to do it again and again. The only other person, Bill Belichick, still coaching. Okay, true. I'm going to leave it at that.
And in a way, Nick's always the NFL existed before Bill.
Yep.
Freestyle, not so much.
Bingo.
You know,
It's-
which just makes it, you know, like he's like a walking, talking encyclopedia on the sport because he's been involved with it for so long. And, you know, like I said, from the beginning.
I don't know what else to say. You are correct. And
About time.
yeah, you're about time. You're correct.
Save that one.
Well, folks, that was an incredible interview. And it wasn't even an interview, an incredible walk through history with an excitable person that wants to continue to preach what he loves.
He laid down multiple generations of freestyle athletes, and now he's finally passed on to the next generation to lead, you know, to teach. You know, what do you say, 2017, 18-ish, you know,
Yep.
kind of step back. But, you know, he can now look back and see how he's helped the sport grow in leaps and bounds when you compare what the tricks that were being performed in the early 1970s versus what you see today and what we'll see at the Olympics in 2026 when they start the dual moguls.
Exactly. Well, we want to thank Nick again for joining us. This was a fun podcast. And hopefully you guys enjoyed it. And we will be back next week with the Basecamp podcast.
New England Ski Journal's Basecamp is a Siemens Media podcast. Siemens Media. Inspiring, informative, insightful.